Let's be direct. If you're sitting here thinking, this scenario doesn't apply to me, my company's different, I'm too senior, I just got a great review, you're probably in one of the most dangerous positions of all. Not because you're wrong that you're not good at your job, but because you've confused performance with protection. Now, I know this because I did the same thing. I was a VP at a Fortune 500 company, and one morning on a Thursday, my boss asked me if I had 15 minutes that Friday for an update. Nobody schedules 15 minutes for an update. So, in the time that it takes to order lunch, gone. I was laid off. So, and the part that really hit me wasn't necessarily just losing the job, although that certainly sucked. It was realizing how much of me was actually inside of that job. I'd moved my whole entire sense of self into that building. My identity, my confidence, my sense of mattering. So this isn't about how to protect your job. Other people cover that super well. This is about something that I didn't see until it's too late. And I wasn't living in my own house. I was renting and I didn't even know it. So how do we move our whole sense of self into a house that we don't own? Well, here's what I think happens. You start a job, you get a new badge, a new laptop, and one day there's this unspoken exchange. You hand over your time, your energy, and your problem solving, and you don't just get a paycheck, you get to feel like you belong somewhere, like you have a place in the world that makes sense, a place where you matter. And that's the part that hooks you, not just the salary, but the meaning. The salary is math, important math, but you can do math anywhere. The meaning is the part that gets into your bones. It's why you start saying we when you talk about the company. It's why your title starts feeling like who you are instead of what you do. And nobody warns you, nobody pulls you aside and says, hey, you're about to move your entire sense of self-worth into a building which you don't own. You're going to spend 20 years making mortgage payment on somebody else's house. No, nobody says that. Why not? Because they're all doing exactly the same thing. Your boss did it, their boss did it, all your teammates do it. The culture runs on that. That's why there's all these initiatives about being part of the family, all this jazz. Lay off your family. I know that it sounds super obvious when I say it out loud, but I've spent a career not really seeing it. So maybe give yourself a minute before you decide that you are immune from this. Because here's a small thing that changed for me and how I see this. After the layoff, I started catching myself saying we about a company that had removed me with a phone call. We means this is mine, but it's definitely not mine. It was never mine. I was renting, and apparently I missed the lease. So here's where it starts to get uncomfortable. Because we all know the headlines. Profitable companies, record earnings, cutting thousands of people in the same quarter. And every time the same question happens. What did they do wrong? Were they underperformers? Clearly they were underperformers. They didn't add value. Because if you add value, you don't get laid off. Different video on that. Here's what makes me nuts about that question. We ask it because we want to believe that if we can find their flaw, then we're safe. If those people screwed up and I'm not screwing up, then I'm protected. It's a fairy tale. We tell our kids that the world is fair and bad things happen to people who earn bad things to happen to them. Look, but the reality is that it falls on everyone. It fell on people who were extraordinary, people who gave decades, people who genuinely believed that their dedication would be reciprocated, and it was not. Not because everybody lied. The system runs on math, and math doesn't give a crap about you. Math doesn't know your name. And maybe here's the thing that I wish that I had in my mind before that call. Your performance is rent. It's not equity. Now I want to make a clear distinction here. Performance is rent. It's not equity. And you can pay rent perfectly for 20 years and still own nothing when the lease is up. That doesn't mean you stop performing. It means you stop confusing the rent with a house. So let's think about this. The career advice that people will tell you is that the answer is skills, networking, visibility, personal brand. And that's how you build up equity, right? Brand equity even. That's how you build up your equity and you provide value. And all of those things are probably right. And you should definitely do those things because they're practical and they matter. And yes, all of those things. But you can have the best network on the planet and the most in-demand skills and a great LinkedIn profile that glows in the dark and still feel like the ground disappeared when you get that call. And that's because you moved everything into the building, not just your work, but your identity and your sense of being somebody. And when that building is gone, people just don't feel unemployed. They feel erased. Like the thing that made them feel real just vanished. And that's not necessarily just a career crisis. That's a who in the hell am I crisis. And you can't fix that with a skills workshop. So the real question isn't how do I become layoff proof? Because what do you actually own? If the badge stopped working this afternoon, what would still be yours? If your badge didn't clock you in or didn't log you in, didn't get you inside the building, what is still yours? And when I got laid off, my honest answer was, yeah, not much. And that was the most clarifying thing that ever happened to me because it showed me exactly how much of my life I had built on somebody else's property. So here's what I'd actually suggest. That you don't have to wait for the layoff to try this. Start asking yourself one question, not while you're in crisis, but just sort of regularly to check in. What's mine? Not what's your company's, what's your title, what's your position, what's mine? What would survive if I get that 15-minute phone call? And then put a little bit of time there. Put an hour a week on something that has nothing to do with your job. Something that's yours regardless. Not a side hustle, not to monetize it, but just to start building on some land that you actually own for yourself. That sounds small, but it's not, because when you have even one thing that doesn't depend on someone else's org chart, then everything feels different. You walk into work differently. You're not desperate. You're not clinging. You're not choosing to be there instead of needing to be there. That's what being transplant ready actually means. Not having a backup plan. It means having roots that are yours, that you can grow wherever you end up. So I'm not here to tell you about how to keep your job. Lots of people doing that. I'm asking a different question. If the job went away tomorrow, what would you actually lose? And if the answer is everything, including yourself, then that job was never actually holding you up. It was just keeping you from noticing that you didn't have a foundation. So you don't need to become irreplaceable to your employer. You need to become irreplaceable to yourself. And that is a completely different project. Tough one. A worthy one. I'll see you in the next one.